Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Educated Colin Snap channel. How you doing? So today we're going to be talking about the August spotlights, the tier list. I made one for July. There was a lot of positive reception. A lot of people liked how it was structured. So we're going to do that for August as well. It should be pretty interesting. So once again, I do have the same rating system, so it goes from S to D. So S is like everyone should get this, no brainer. A is very good. You should definitely consider spending your resources on this particular one. B is still pretty solid. However, you're gonna need to like one of the cards. So if you like, let's say for example Galactus is in B, you have to really want Galactus, you have to really want Spider Ham to say, okay, I'm going to spend my resources on there. So it's not something that everyone should consider getting. This is like, okay, I really want to play with this card, or I really like this card. Those are really where you'd get that. C, not really recommended. Not doesn't mean that you can't get it, but it just means that you have to make sure that this is something you want to build into, or the spotlights are relevant enough that, hey, even though this is a C tier, I'm picking it because of the spotlights and the cards are a bonus. And then D tier, I don't really recommend. I just think if it's in D tier, there's better options somewhere else for your month. So I really wouldn't recommend D or anything lower than that. So that's really the ratings there. So for the first one, Galactus um, section, this one's particularly interesting because you're not guaranteed to not have the first list, right? You could have Galactus. So because of that, there's way more permutations in what you're missing, what you have. So instead of the regular 4, I had to double it. So put it into 8. So there's a lot of variability here in terms of what you may be missing. But overall, if you don't have all of them, I'm still gonna say it's a B tier spotlight. Galactus isn't really dominating the meta. You don't really see it too much in the current ecosystem, and it just has some issues right now. It's not a guaranteed win that which it used to be. So it's not necessarily an A plus or anything. I don't even have Galactus Nimrod, and I'm still like on the fence of whether I should go for this. So it's not necessarily super core. I will say, the Spider Ham is pretty good. That's definitely something that could make you want to get this if you're missing Spider Ham. But one thing to keep in mind is Spider Ham is a 3,000 token card. So if you are missing Spider Ham, it might be better just to spend the tokens for it than to use your spotlight resources. You usually want to save them for those premium ones. So um, that's something to keep in mind. Something someone was asking me to add was to add the token values for all of the cards, the total. So like for this one, right, Galactus 6,000 Nimrod is I believe 3,000, and then Spider Ham is also 3,000. So they wanted me to put that there. But the issue I had is when it comes to the new cards, I don't know if they're going to be Series 4 or Series 5. I guess maybe I could just assume they're all Series 5, and maybe that would make it better. But that's not true, right? So that's the problem, right? They don't tell us what series the new cards are going to release in, and that does change things. So it's hard for me to just put that information there. If that changes, then we'll adjust. But for now, that's why it's not on there. And also, room is hard. But there is something unique here. I do have this B minus tier for Galactus Nimrod. So the rationale for this was I was really struggling where to put that particular tier. I wanted to put it C tier, but when I was looking at it, like the fact that Galactus and Nimrod are together is pretty meaningful because you can put those in the same deck, and if you get both of them, you get a new deck to play. So it is actually relevant that they're together, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a bad set of cards to go for, but it's not the same value as Galactus and Spider Ham. I think that is strictly B, and something a little bit better than Galactus Nimrod. So I wanted to put a little distinction there. I'm gonna try not to use this minus tier all too often, even though I have another example later in this video. But essentially, Galactus and the Spider Hammer is what's dominating, but you kind of need Galactus. You kind of need to be missing Galactus for this to be worth it. If you're not missing Galactus, then and you still want like Spider Ham, I would just say use your tokens. So Galactus is kind of holding it together. If you already have Galactus, then it kind of makes the rest of these not worth it at all. And then the last one is just like the variant tier. If you like the variants, there's no real rating there, but if you're missing all three and you want this variant, you can definitely do that. So that's this section, right? The ones without a new card, those are going to be more effort because there's more permutations, because normally you're guaranteed to not have one of them, but here you could have all three and then it doesn't really matter. Next up, we have the Lady DeathStrike, Modork, and Stature variant tier. This one, even if you're missing all three, I would say it's just B tier. Even though Lady Deathstrike is playable, I do think it's not the strongest card going to be releasing this season, so it's hard to say, oh, you should use all your resources. It's definitely A tier or anything like that. So I do think if you're missing all three cards, it's something to consider. I wouldn't necessarily say you have to get it, so it's not A tier or anything like that, but it's something to consider. So feel free to do that. There's not really any distinct difference in terms of like whether you're missing the discard or the stature. They're both still decent cards, so they're not bad cards. A lot of times, one of the cards is like, in my opinion, worse than the others, but here they're both pretty good. So if you want to play one of the other two, you can, but once again, it's not recommended. I think there are better spotlight sections here, but this is that particular set of rewards. So if you're missing all three, fine. If not, and if you're only missing DeathStrike, don't recommend it at all, really. Now, next one here, we have X-23, Nebula, and Silk. This is where we start seeing the A caches to show up. So I think X-23 is going to be the best card to get through spotlights, just because its ability is pretty important and pretty game changing, and you can build decks because you have this card. So there will be decks that if you're missing this card, you cannot build. And that kind of stuff is very important in terms of like how good it is. If down the line, like there's things like Jeff, right, where I was recommending Jeff early, but there are just decks that you cannot build if you don't have Jeff. There's decks you cannot build if you don't have Iron Lad. There's decks you can't build if you don't have X-23, and you feel it more because as more decks get created, you're like, oh, I would love to play this deck, but I don't have X-23, and there's no suitable replacement, right? And that's the issue. If there's no suitable replacement with Jeff, you have Nightcrawler, right? So there is a suitable quote unquote replacement for Jeff that can make the deck playable. Where with X-23, there's not really anything like that. You could argue maybe Electra, but it's not the same. So I definitely think this is a card you really want to consider getting if you can. And if you're also missing Nebula, then those are two very premium cards. Silk, I would say, is not that important here. So regardless if you have Silk or not, doesn't matter. It's not going to change whether you should get this or not. But if you're missing X-23, this is a card you can definitely spend your resources on, in my opinion, and feel good about. Now, obviously, as the meta settles and we actually get to play with this card, I'll have an updated opinion on whether it's worth it. But this is my initial impressions based on the card and the review and the overall meta state. So that's my thoughts there. And then the last section is the Silver Samurai, Kitty Pryde, Spider-Man 2099 section. So I also think this is A tier, but that's if you're missing Kitty Pryde. And I know that's not going to be a lot of people. So they gave Kitty Pryde to everyone for free if you were playing the game at a particular time some months ago, maybe like a month plus ago. And a lot of players already have Kitty Pride because of that. So if you are relatively new and you're missing Kitty Pride is still very strong, very good, still played in a decent amount of decks. That I would say that Kitty Pride is still a card you might want to be looking into, right? Just like Nebula, just a very strong card. The issue is that most players will already have Kitty Pride, so it's not going to be relevant. But if you are missing it, definitely get it. And then Silver Samurai also, maybe I think it's better than other people, but I think this card's going to be very strong as well. Just a lot of good synergy, especially with the new series pass card coming this month, and just playing cards that mess with your opponent is so powerful. So cards like Silver Samurai, I think. Also Zabu Engine, right? It's a 4-cost card, so you can play it on 3. So I just think there's a lot of good things going for the card. So I do have it. If you're missing both Silver Samurai and Kitty Pride, then it's a pretty good spotlight to get. Now, if you have Kitty Pride like most people, then here's where the troubles begin, right? I initially put the third section, right, if you're only missing Kitty Pride, as a C tier, but I was really thinking about it, and I was thinking about myself in my situation, which is where I have Kitty Pride, don't have Silver Samurai or Spider-Man 2099. Does the fact that I can get Spider 2099 affect my thought process on getting this particular spotlight? And I would say overall, yes, it does affect it. So it was weird for me to put it as C tier because I can definitely see where having the option to hit a new card, Spider-Man 2099, would make this feel a little bit better. So once again, I don't think it's B tier level. I don't think it's something you have to be getting, or if you really want Silver Samurai, that it's worth it. But it is good enough that, hey, if you really like this Kitty variant, I'm not gonna dock you points. I'm not gonna say, oh my god, why would you do that? You know, it's still relevant, and the Kitty variant is good enough that I'm gonna throw in some caveats there, that if that's something you want to go for, then it's perfectly fine by me. So gonna have this B- tier, not a full B tier, but still good enough that it's warrant some consideration if you really want Silver Samurai and you already have Kitty Pride, because that's going to be most players. So that's my thoughts there. And then finally, we have the next season caches. Now, the issue here is we don't have the full, I believe, October. What's after? The full next season's caches here. So, so that's a little bit of an issue there. So once the official patch comes out in a couple of weeks, I believe, we will have the data mines, and then we'll see if they've changed things, but according to previous experience, we'll have some more data on what's going to be in the spotlights for the upcoming months. So right now we just have Jeff, Ghost Spider, Null, which is interesting because Null's already repeated. So there are some cards that haven't been introduced in the spotlight yet, like Snowguard and Stegron and things like that. And I am wondering if those are going to be in a series drop coming soon, or if that's just random variants and these are the cards they just don't think are good enough for now. So definitely something to think about, and we'll see in the future. But those are the next series caches. So overall, that's kind of the idea here. I would really just focus on X23's spotlight. I think if you are a regular player, like most players, I think this is the one to focus on. But if you're missing Galactus and you really want it, that's fine. If you're missing all 3 of these cards, that's also fine. And if you really want the Kitty Pride variant, then you can go down here as well and get this. So there's definitely a couple options this season. Nothing too game breaking. There's definitely a world where you just get X23 through with your tokens if you don't want to get these, right? Because if you already have Nebula, if you already have Silk, then X23 is a very good card that you might want, but maybe you don't want to use your spotlights here. So you could definitely just get X23 with your tokens and then get maybe Galactus or get maybe Silver Samurai that way. So there's definitely some flexibility here in how you want to use your resources this month. But that's my overall thoughts in how you want to navigate this season. A lot of people found this helpful, so I'm glad to do it for this season as well. So overall, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educated Colin Snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be